Welcome back to part 2 of our miscarriage episode. We're just going to delve straight into the conversation and just look at the grieving process after a miscarriage. So I know, Aisha, you said that you took off a month and a half after you had your miscarriage from work. But Charlotte, I just want to ask, in terms of, you had an early miscarriage, so was it the same sort of thing for you? Did you feel like you had that right to take off time from work, or?
I think you feel less like you do, because people mean it with no disrespect, I'm sure, but they're like, oh, good job it was early, and little comments like that, which it is meant well. It is always meant well, but it is a good thing that it was early, but it's still like to me and my husband, it was still like a start of a life, and it was something that we'd wanted. So it's a grieving process, but probably just in a different way to a late miscarriage, or obviously a stillbirth or something. So it's totally different experience to that. But I think I had enough. I mean, I was self-employed, so I gave myself time to take time out physically, and then I kind of my way to deal with it was to just press on, because I wanted to distract myself. Friends and family were very good. My mum was very good. My mum had a missed miscarriage after having me. So
what's a missed miscarriage?
That's where you know you're pregnant, but your body doesn't naturally start the miscarriage process. So she went for her 12-week scan, and when she got there was like the fetus had stopped developing at like 8 or 9 weeks, and there was no heartbeat, but her body hadn't done the natural process of getting rid of it of sorts. So she had a DNC thing, a surgical procedure to remove it. So she was a really good solid support, because I could talk to her. I hadn't really told anybody, so I had told one friend, but the friend that I had told about being pregnant wasn't overly supportive about the loss, but she was going through some things of her own, so I didn't bear a grudge or anything. So, but there were other friends that I opened up to were really willing to listen, but you still got those same comments about, oh, it's meant, it's nature's way, it's this way, and deep down that's like, things happen for a reason in life, and that's fine. But at that moment in time, when things are really raw, those things either anger you or upset you, and I probably wasn't very nice to some people, because you're still really like emotional. It's really raw still. When people say that now it's a totally different kettle of fish, because all that time has passed. I have a healthy child, I have another one on the way, so it feels different. But at that moment in time, they are the worst things to say to somebody.
So what are the things to say? Because in the last couple of months, I've had a few friends who've said, oh, I had an early miscarriage. But what would you say? What could have someone said to just...
I think it's probably best to not say anything along the lines of about, and that it is particularly about it being it's nature or whatever. I think it's best just to say you're there. I think when somebody knows, little text messages just saying that you're thinking of them, or just that you're in their thoughts or things like that, those little things go a long way. And listen when they want to talk, and I probably wouldn't probe unless they actually invite you to talk about it with them. I think it's best, it sounds so silly, I think it's best to say nothing other than that you're there for them. And when they do approach you, just listen. Listen, and you'll know what not to,
Wow.
I mean, they're not gonna bite your head off, I'm sure, but those things, those two phrases about, oh, at least it was early, oh, it's nature's way, blah blah blah, you just think that a week later you're like, no, I don't care if it was nature, I don't
my baby,
that's my I hurt still, physically and emotionally I'm in pain, that's not helping me right now. Now you can kind of understand why they might say it, and always it's meant with love and it's meant well, but at the time you're just angry and upset and you just think, oh shush, like, you know, I don't want to hear that right now. So I just think being quiet and listening.
Is that the same with you, Aisha? Because like, even how I found out about you, I think I was messaging you sent me a Christmas card, I was just thanking you for the card and just jovially like, where's the next baby coming? And you just told me, oh, I had a miscarriage, and I can't remember now how I responded.
You were speechless.
But what would you say? What advice would you say for people who want to support women who have had a miscarriage?
Yeah, I think similar to what you said, it's I think sorry for your loss and I'm here if you want to talk is enough, to be honest, because even with how late my miscarriage was, I still heard the things like, oh yeah, you know, it's nature's way, or our bodies have a way of, you know, making difficult decisions for us, and oh, you can try again. And it's like at that moment in time, as you said, even now still, I'll be honest with you, for me it was a child that I loved and I was growing a bond with, and I meant something to me. So things like, oh, you can always try again, it's like dismissing the fact that she ever existed in a way. So just keep it obviously simple, just I'm sorry for your loss, I'm here if you want to talk. And I think for women who, this is just a personal thing, for women who have experienced a miscarriage before, if your friend has a miscarriage or something, don't talk about your miscarriage. I know that sounds horrible, but if, you know, I hope it doesn't happen to anyone I know, but if I had a friend who had a miscarriage and I'm consoling her, I wouldn't then start talking about when I had my miscarriage, because it's not about me at that moment in time. It's about them. So try not to make comparisons about what your experience was. Just let them have that time to grieve. And then if they want to know what you went through, they will naturally ask you. I mean, I asked friends who were medical professionals or dealt with women, and you know, I went to them, I said, is this normal? And then they told me things that helped, but at that time I didn't want someone to say, oh, when I had my miscarriage, you know, it's not about you. It's about me. So yeah,
in terms of like the grieving process, I think a lot of the onus is placed on the woman, that because it's happened to your body. But how do you feel like it affected your other halves? Was it the same emotionally for them, or?
It is, because even though they've not housed it or they've not gone through the physical trauma of losing it, they obviously wanted the baby as well. And I think that my husband had a tendency to, he's a quiet person anyway, but he had a tendency not to say much anyway. And I was not a very nice wife. I just assumed that he would just plod on, you know. And I've never seen him cry. And the only 2 times I've ever seen my husband cry was losing the baby and when our daughter was born. They're the only 2 times I've seen him cry. It doesn't matter how far you push him, he never cries. So I knew it had affected him, for him to react like that. But I think he got forgotten, bless him. I don't know if he spoke to any of his friends. I don't know to this day. I don't know if he phoned his mum. I don't honestly know. His family are quite closed people, so I don't think he would have phoned his mum or his brother. Also at the time, his brother had just told us that he was pregnant with his second child, and they were 8 weeks pregnant. So always now, like round about her birthday is this, and I'm not cross at them because I'm glad they've got healthy children, but at the time I remember being really angry and not wanting to like really talk with them at that moment in time, because they already had one, and I was like, well, it's not fair, like, you know, why have they got another one, why have we had to go through this? So I doubt he would have spoken to his brother at that moment in time. So I think my poor husband, bless him, plodded on through on his own with a very moody wife who didn't give him any time of the day. And now on reflection, we've even sat down now once time has like healed things better, and I've like apologized and said like, are you okay, you know, like I'm sorry I wasn't very supportive, I just got really selfish and like absorbed in my emotions. So I think they really do grieve. I just don't think I think they feel guilty to watch the woman go through the physical trauma of it all, and they're obviously not part of that. I think that hurts them just as much as it does like actually like losing the baby. So I think that for men, I think I can only vouch for my side, but yeah, he got left to his own devices, bless him. So,
Aisha?
I think my husband is similar to yours in the sense that he's very, strong man, doesn't show much emotion. If he does, it's very, very rare. So for me, the grieving process, I used to, when it happened, I wanted to talk about it with him because you're the father of this child. We need to talk about it. And he didn't want to talk about it. Every time I would bring it up, he would just, it would be like a by the way conversation. Even when we were trying to plan the funeral, he didn't really want to go into the detail. He just wanted it over and done with. And I was angry at him because I felt that he was just dismissing what had just happened. But I learned over time that that's how he grieves. Whereas I'm more of an emotional, outward griever, crying and, being, very visibly sad. I had to start hiding my grief because I didn't want it to affect him, because I knew it wasn't easy for him to see me, in the physical pain, but then also in the continuous emotional pain. So I would go and hide away in a little room and cry and then come back and pretend that, everything was fine, because I didn't want him to, experience what he didn't want to acknowledge. So for the first, I think, 3 weeks after the miscarriage, it was really difficult because he felt like he'd lost his wife. I'm quite a loud, bubbly, I'm always in his face, kiss me, hug me. And there was none of that. I was, most of the time I'd be like in a little corner somewhere, just in my own, sort of mind. So he felt that he was losing me, and it was partly because we just weren't on the same wavelengths in terms of how we were grieving. He was more insular, I was more outward. So it did put a bit of tension on our relationship during that period. But as soon as the funeral happened, literally it was like a sigh of relief for both of us, because you sort of feel like you're in limbo before you bury your child. Because for us, at least, we were having a post-mortem, so I don't know how to put it into words. When I was carrying her, I knew where she was in my body, right? When I gave birth to her, I knew where she was in this little basket next to me. But when I left the hospital, I didn't know, I couldn't visualize where she was. I knew she was in a mortuary. I knew she was transferred to London, but I couldn't visualize it. So that made things very difficult. And obviously as a parent, you want to know where your kids are all the time. So it was the same sort of experience. So that was difficult. And we were both in limbo because we couldn't, at any given time, we didn't know where she was. We didn't know what was happening to her. So to have her back and to bury her was like, yes, we know where she is. If we want to see her, we know where we can go. And now our relationship is so much more different because I think we've experienced that together and we've like closed that chapter together. And now it's easy for us to talk about it without getting all, deep and, why did it happen? It's more, we know where she is. We know that, we did everything we could for her. We gave her the right burial and everything. And now our relationship is better, but it definitely affected us mentally. And for him, I think, as you said, it's difficult because they don't feel like they're entitled to physically show their emotions. And I had to remind my mum, has he eaten? Make sure he's eaten, make sure he's, getting some rest, because he was working as well at the time, so that was difficult.
And that's actually what I was going to say. Now when I think about it, you talked about having the entitlement to grieve or for your body to recover, and I wonder what rights men have if their wives or their partners experience miscarriage. They have to just go on as normal, but then, and it's like the system doesn't really acknowledge that they actually would need to grieve, or they need to be there physically. Maybe their wife just needs, you're off work for a month and a half and he's at work, and you feel like, I need you here with me rather than, but the system doesn't necessarily, I don't know if it does, give them that paternity leave that maybe they might actually need.
I think for themselves, but also for their partner as well.
Support.
Yeah, because ultimately, for my husband at least, I think he didn't want to show he was upset because he was more concerned for me.
Yeah.
He felt he had to be strong for me because he was like, we've got a 3-year-old. One of us needs to have it together. You know, one of us needs to be able to keep this house running. So I can't be like in my feelings kind of thing. But he definitely could have done with some time off, if that makes sense, to just not think about work, not think about the intensity. But maybe it helped him, and maybe that's what helped him get over it. I don't know. For me, I didn't want to go back to work, but maybe that was his way of, you know, just getting over the situation of moving on. So yeah, it's hard for them, but I think, as you said, just being conscious of the fact that it was their child as well, and they might not feel the same way, but they deserve the opportunity to
talk about it.
Talk about it if they want to.
So just talking about the next chapter, when did you feel that you were ready to try again? In your case, you've now had a daughter, you're pregnant again. Aisha, it was a few months ago. When did you know that you were ready to go again?
I am quite an impatient and impetuous type of person. So physically, once I was recovered physically, I'd asked the doctor at the early pregnancy unit, and they said, well, once you're physically recovered and when you feel emotionally ready, then there's no reason why you can't like start trying as soon as you want to. So once I'd like physically recovered, I had like one normal cycle. We had like a conversation about it, and he felt the same, and he was like, well, let's just go for it.
How quickly did you have that normal cycle after miscarriage?
So after I had the miscarriage, my cycle came back like straight away. As I had 1 month, had a normal period, and then the next. So we didn't try that time. I waited for my body to have like a normal period again, and then the next month we tried, and we fell pregnant that month. So it was all very quick, and in a way it was really good, but in a way it made like more anxieties like flare up with the first pregnancy. But so no, I was quite keen to just get back on the bandwagon and go again, because I felt if I left it too much time I would be too scared to do it again. So I just kind of just went for it basically.
Yeah, I'm so for me it was a bit different because we had a postmortem and I'd had a bunch of tests. We wanted to wait until we knew the results of that before we made any decisions, because we didn't know why I'd miscarried. So I wanted to sort of have someone say to me, it's okay to continue. So we waited, saw the doctor, everything was fine. I think now, obviously I've had a couple cycles and I feel physically ready. I think my husband is more concerned than me, just because, you know, we won't go into it too much. We had a premature baby the first time. I've had a late miscarriage. I think he's just more concerned for, is everything going to be okay the next time? Because I can't experience this with you again. I don't want you to go through this again. So, you know, he basically turned around and said, listen, one is enough. One is enough. Don't worry. We don't have to do it for another one. Just, you know, this is fine. And I was like, no, I want a second child. So now it's more me being very like, listen, I'm ready. And I think it's just he wants to be sure that I'm ready. So I think the readiness is just, I wouldn't say it's like, it's not so much ready to replace. I don't want to give the impression that it's like, oh, I'm ready because I want to replace. It's just, it's a longing that you have. And that, even if I said, oh, I'm not going to have another baby because I don't want to experience that longing will always be there because I wanted another child. So I feel like I'm physically ready. We've had the conversation, you know, similar to yourselves, and we feel that we're mentally in the right space to have, you know, that opportunity again. But yeah, you can never get away from the fear of what if. You know, you can't protect against it, but you just have to try, I think, and see what happens.
I think once you've lost one, I think it always is in the back of your mind that even if it was early or late, that does happen to people. And it makes it a reality to you then, doesn't it? That you don't feel safe until they're crying in your arms.
Exactly.
Even like with an early one, I remember taking Florence home and being, obviously you've got so many hormones like afterwards, but thinking, no, somebody's going to take her away from me, or something's going to take her away from me, and looking at her like going, somebody might take her, and wanting to like put her down for fear that she would go away or something bad would happen, or be frightened, like when she was in the Moses basket sleeping or something. So I think it always is
in the back of your mind.
Always there thinking, it could happen. It's not like...
Sorry, go
on. No, go.
No, I think also when my husband and I were talking about trying again, I made a statement which was, I just said it like in passing, trying to make light of it. I said, hopefully I can do my job properly this time. And he was like, what did you just say? And I said, I had premature baby, miscarriage, and I felt like I have one job, which is to carry this baby to term, and twice I failed. And he was like, don't think like that. It's not, you haven't failed. It's just what happens. So to have him reassure me that this isn't your fault, it's nothing you did, I'm here, I support you, adds to the readiness to want to give this man another chance.
Yeah. And I'm actually glad he said that, because I feel that probably that's a feeling a lot of women have, like a sense of failure.
Oh God, yeah.
That's a big feeling, and that sense of failure, actually, I want to ask, plays into a lot of your mental health. So even looking back, did you feel like your mental health was unstable during that time, or did you feel like it was okay, or did you actually feel like you went through a time where you were either depressed or like it affected your mental state?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I literally recounted from the moment I woke up that day when I had the miscarriage to the time the miscarriage happened, what I ate, what I did, what I drank. Like, I was like, okay, what did I do? Like, what did I actually do? Because this baby was fine yesterday. The doctor saw her yesterday, she was fine. So between yesterday and today, it must have been something I did. And just that immense guilt of, I couldn't protect my child, I didn't do my job, you have one job, why can't you do it? It affected me a lot, because I felt like in everything else in life, I'm doing well at. I've got a good job, I've got, good family, good friends, but this thing, I keep failing, and I'm not a failure. Like, I'm an A-star student. Everything has always been, on a certain level, and I couldn't deal with not succeeding in this avenue, and it just really took me into a place I didn't want to be. I had insomnia, I couldn't sleep. The doctors prescribed me sleeping medicine, I didn't take it because I was like, I'm not doing that. I couldn't sleep, I just wasn't myself, and I'd zone out. People would be talking to me, I wouldn't really register what they're saying because I wasn't there. I was just in my head, and it's partly because I didn't feel like I was still allowed to be talking about it after a while. After a month or two, people expect you to have moved on. So you then internalize it, and you don't feel like you have a right to talk about how you feel. So then it became this thing that was living in my head, and I couldn't really get it out there. So yeah, definitely just... It affected me significantly in that way.
Were there any resources that you drew on professionally that you can recommend to anybody?
Yeah, so apart from the bereavement midwife, there's a organisation called Talk Action that my GP recommended. It's like talk therapy, and you just you call and they talk to you, and you can basically just say how you feel, and it's not like... It's a two-way conversation, but they're not trying to tell you how you should feel. They're just letting you express those feelings. And also just being able to ask for help, I think, has been really good. Just to say, look, I don't feel good today. At work as well, to say, I don't feel good today. Can I have a day where I'm just not being bothered? So counselling, definitely. And talk therapy, I think, has really helped me.
So I just want to say thank you again to Aisha and Charlotte for sharing your stories of miscarriage, courageous women, and I honestly wish you all the best in your journey of motherhood. Thank you for tuning in. Please don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe to our channel, and we look forward to seeing you again on Woman Meets Motherhood.